Welcome to our webinar on pre-owned EVs. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Anna and Elise. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anna. I'm our Electric Vehicle Program Director, and Caroline and I will be sharing this presentation, so you'll hear from me a little later.
Hi everyone, I'm Elise. I'm the Drive Green intern for the summer, so I get to support Anna and Caroline's work and excited to be here today.
Okay, so we'll get going with our presentation. As always, we like to introduce who we are and our background. We're the Drive Green team at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. We're part of a nonprofit as the Drive Green team at Green Energy Consumers Alliance that's based in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And the mission is to empower consumers and communities to speed a just transition to a zero carbon world. The Drive Green program itself has been around for a little bit over 10 years and started as a program that helped consumers find local EVs. It worked closely with dealers. During the pandemic, consumer behavior shifted, and we've focused a lot more on EV education and outreach. I notice someone has a raised hand. If you notice at any point that you're not able to see the screen or you're not able to hear us, please drop that in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll make sure to address that. So my colleagues already introduced themselves. I think I neglected to introduce myself. So my name is Caroline. I'm an EV program associate here on the Drive Green team, and I'll be helping to lead today's presentation. Just to get started, we'll go over a few logistics. Participants will be muted throughout the webinar. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. There is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You may ask questions. At the end of the presentation, we will spend some time going over your questions. And there are also closed captions available. There should be an option for that at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of the webinar, later today, we will make sure to share the slides and a recording of this presentation. We'll send that by email. I'll also mention our Truth to Empower campaign. So this webinar is a part of a greater campaign because we're seeing a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there about clean energy. So in this webinar, we'll be looking at all of the facts about pre-owned EVs. And if you are interested in seeing more factual resources, you may scan the QR code, and there are a bunch more resources on our Truth to Power page on our webpage. So to start, I'll go over our agenda for this presentation. We'll start with the benefits of buying pre-owned. We'll talk about the process and things to be aware of when you're buying a used EV versus buying a used gas car, for example. We'll go over the rebates and how to navigate them and how to obtain them. We'll look at some popular used EVs that are backed up by some really good resources. We'll take a bigger picture, a zoomed out outlook of the used car market, as well as federal developments. We had a chance to talk to some members of our community about their experience with driving a pre-owned and pre-loved EV. So we'll share some of our insights from those conversations. And before the Q&A, we'll finish up with a brief checklist and a couple of resources that are great to check out when you are considering buying a pre-owned EV.
So I'll jump in here to start us off with some benefits of buying a pre-owned EV. And if we can go to the next slide, Caroline, I think you're going to have to walk me through this. So we've been running this Drive Green program since 2016. And when we started, there weren't really any used EVs on the market. And we've seen since then how the number of choices and the variety of electric vehicles on the market has really increased. And obviously the used car market follows the new car market. So we're a couple of years behind maybe, but there are a lot more used EV models available because there have been so many new models on the new market in the last couple of years. In particular, a lot of people have opted to lease electric vehicles because they're trying out a new technology. The structure of the federal tax credit incentivizes leasing for some vehicles. So there are lots and lots of vehicles coming off 3-year leases all the time that are excellent choices for a used electric vehicle. And then we just finished a 3-webinar series all about charging infrastructure. So we're not going to talk about that too much today. But if you're interested, we can share the links to that. The long story short is that charging infrastructure has improved. Public charging infrastructure has improved both in terms of the amount of it and the quality and reliability of it. Still a ways to go in some areas, but there's a lot more than most people realize. And in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island, there are incentives to install charging at home, even in multifamily homes. And in some cases, they'll cover 100% of the costs of the installation. So all of that, we've got lots more information on in our charging webinar series, but we just wanted to mention it here. Then the second thing we wanted to point out is that used EVs are quite affordable. So I actually just read a study this morning that shows that right now in May, the price differential between a new gas car and a new electric car is around $9,000, but the price differential between a used gas car and a used electric vehicle is only about $2,000. And the prices for used EVs, a couple years ago, you were looking at a lot of used luxury vehicles, so the prices were sort of relatively high. But now, again, because there are so many more models on the road, the prices of used EVs are quite affordable. So you will hear us quoting a company called Recurrent Auto a lot. They specialized in the used EV market, and they share a lot of data. And so just a couple of months ago, they released a report that showed the state of the used car market in 2024, which is now a little out of date. But what it shows you is that as of June 2024, 57% of used EVs cost less than $30,000, and 30-something% cost less than $25,000. And so if you look on the right, you can see the graph, and it shows a really big increase from August 2022 to June 2024 in terms of the percentage of the used EV inventory that is priced under $30,000 or $25,000, which means there's just a lot more affordable options than there used to be. In addition, in August 2022, that is when the Inflation Reduction Act was signed. So we didn't even have a used car federal tax credit at that point. Most of the states didn't have used car rebates, but now, at least until the end of this year, we are in a situation where we've got a federal tax credit for used vehicles and state rebates for used vehicles that we'll talk about more. So when you stack those on top, you can bring those prices even further down. So this slide is just to show if you're thinking used EV is $50,000, that's a couple years outdated. There's lots more options, and they can come down quite a bit with those incentives that we'll talk about. If you've ever attended one of our Electric Vehicle 101 presentations, you know that we talk about maintenance costs being lower for an electric vehicle. And that is true over the lifetime of the vehicle, but it is particularly true in the later years of a vehicle's life. So the reasons why EVs have lower maintenance costs is the main thing is that they just have fewer moving parts. So there's fewer things that break or rust or need to be replaced over the life of the vehicle. But those benefits really show up in the latter half of a vehicle's lifetime because that's when in a gas car that things start really going wrong. So to illustrate that, we have a graph on the right with data from a 2020 Consumer Report study. It's a couple years old, but it is a good study, and it is one of the few that represents this fact that we're trying to convey. So what we have in this graph are the estimated per mile repair and maintenance costs for different types of vehicles. So the dark red solid line at the top is ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles. And you can see that up to 50,000 miles, it's about 3 cents per mile. Those are your estimated per mile repair and maintenance costs. From 50 to 100,000, we go up to 6 cents. And then from 100 to 200,000, we go up all the way to 8 cents per mile. And so if you look at the two lines underneath, the battery electric vehicle, BEV, or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEV, you can see that they follow a similar trend of repair and maintenance costs are lowest at the beginning, and then they go up over the vehicle's life, but they go up a lot less than those of gas cars. So if you want to picture or visualize the benefit of getting a used EV over a used gas car, what you're looking at is the difference between that solid red line and the dotted lines underneath. So particularly if you're looking for a used vehicle in general, going electric means you should see more savings on the maintenance side. And you can summarize all that with the last data points on that graph, which is the lifetime average. In addition to lower maintenance costs, you'll also see lower fuel costs, which is the next slide. We really recommend this resource, which is linked on the slide, and you'll get the slides after the webinar, but you can plug in the vehicle that you are currently driving on the left, and then any electric vehicle that you're considering purchasing on the right, and plug in what you pay per kilowatt hour on your electric bill and what current gas prices are in your region, and it will calculate for you the benefit of switching to an electric vehicle over a gas car. Right now, of course, we are in a very interesting time in terms of gas prices. So from one day to the next, those might jump a lot. Your electric rates are much more stable. And if you want a guide on how to figure out what you're actually paying per kilowatt hour on your electric bill, in our recent webinar about charging at home, we show a sample electric bill and show you how to add all that up and figure that out. But long story short, electric vehicles are a lot more efficient than gas cars, so you should see lower costs per mile, both in terms of fuel costs and maintenance costs when you buy a used EV. And with that, of course, we are the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. We spend more time on this in our Electric Vehicle 101 presentation, but we do want to just mention it again here. There are really big environmental and public health benefits from switching from gas cars to electric vehicles. Pure electric vehicles have no tailpipe pollution at all, but even when you take into account how the electricity is generated, in New England, EVs dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we link to a tool from the Union of Concerned Scientists where you can plug in your specific zip code and your specific vehicle, and it will show you the relative emissions. And then higher EV adoption rates, or replacing more of the vehicles on our roads that are currently gas cars with electric vehicles, is a really big public health strategy because gas cars create so much harmful localized air pollution, mostly particulate matter and ground level ozone, but lots of other pollutants as well that harm human health. And the more that we can get those internal combustion engines off our roads and replace them with battery electric vehicles, the better our air quality will be and the better our health will be. So these are just to keep in mind, but we'll dive into the specifics of used cars, used electric vehicles in the next section.
Okay, in this next section, we'll talk about battery health and a couple of other things that are important to keep in mind when you are looking to buy a used electric vehicle. So, like I mentioned, battery health is really important to understand. And battery health refers to the condition and performance capacity of the EV's battery over time. More so, how much charge is it able to hold, and what is the current maximum range. A degrading battery might result in a range loss and lower battery capacity or lower capacity to hold charge over a long period of time. There are some contributing factors to this. Of course, the vehicle's age is a contributing factor, as is with other devices. The age of the device is important. How often you use the vehicle, how often you use the device. These are very marginal. Battery chemistry is also important. Some batteries have different makeups, and extreme temperatures, meaning extreme hot or cold temperatures might affect how much you're able to efficiently charge and how much or how efficient your range is within that extreme temperature. Given that, it's important to know as well what can be done to slow that battery degradation process. Good thing that EVs are equipped with some tools that help to combat battery degradation. These are battery and thermal management systems. They're built into the vehicle and they'll protect from extreme heat, high voltage, or extreme states of charge. And what that really refers to is, and we'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation, sometime when you're charging your EV, we recommend maintaining a charge between 10% to 80% of a full battery. And that helps to enhance battery capacity over your vehicle's lifespan. And that is what we would call an optimal operating level for your EV. But the battery and thermal management systems are built into the vehicle. Generally don't have to worry about them, but sometimes in the summer and the winter, we face extreme hot or cold temperatures. So it's important to know that your vehicle is equipped with tools that enhance your battery's capacity. And in terms of checking battery state of health when you're considering buying an EV, there are some steps that you can take to check the battery health before you buy your used EV. It's important to ask the dealership to perform a diagnostic scan and provide you with a report. Additionally, you might ask the dealer, or if you're buying it from a private owner, understanding the previous owner's driving patterns or driving habits might give you some extra context. This also can be told via how many miles are on the car. But despite the dealership should be able to perform a diagnostic scan and provide you with a battery health report. Recurrent is a resource that we've mentioned so far, but Recurrent has a tool where you can plug in your vehicle data, and essentially the tool will estimate and predict the battery health of your vehicle or the vehicle in question. It'll provide you with graphs and other images that help to clarify and illustrate the predicted battery health. That tool is linked to this slide, so you can access that when we send out the slides. So a great thing about EVs is that used EVs receive the typical warranties that a gas car might receive and a battery warranty. And so most battery manufacturers, all manufacturers are mandated to extend and promote a battery warranty for EV drivers. And if you are buying a used EV, you essentially can take on the remaining battery warranty of the previous driver or owner. And most manufacturers actually will exceed a national requirement. And so what we're seeing is major manufacturers will offer buyers of new vehicles, of new EVs, battery warranty to cover the first 8 years, 100,000 miles. So if you bought an EV 1 or 2 years into that warranty, you would have access to the remaining battery warranty. And when you are buying your EV, among your documents that you receive from the dealer, you would receive a written clarification in your documents that you do have access to this battery warranty. And a tip and something that we will mention in one of our last sections is sometimes you can schedule a pre-purchase inspection to test for battery life on your own, and you can confirm with the dealership which battery and vehicle warranties transfer to you as the new owner. We'll now look at a really neat graph, also from Recurrent Auto again, It's important to note that EV batteries rarely need replacement. Um, so in this study, there were 15,000 cars in the recurrent community that were studied, and battery degradation rates were studied as well. And what we saw was that battery degradation of 1 to 2% per year is normal and generally increases after the first 50,000 miles. If you were to buy a new EV, you might see within the first 10,000 miles that there is a little bit of battery degradation, but then that stagnates, and you'll only see a degradation rate of 1 to 2% per year. And of all vehicles that have been on the road since 2011, that's how far back this study goes, Recurrent found that of the 15,000 vehicles, only 2.5% of EV batteries had to have been replaced. So that is an important figure to note, that of many vehicles on the road, and EVs have grown tremendously since the early Leafs on the road in 2011, that among those vehicles, a very, very small number have had to have their batteries replaced. And another really interesting study is the idea of how long the battery will last. We took some information from Geotab. They're a company that facilitates telematic communications for fleet vehicles. But what's more important is that a study from last year looked at 10,000 EVs and studied different battery degradation for different EV models. And given that 1 to 2% rate per year from the study we just looked at, they found a similar number, that batteries tend to degrade by around 1.8% per year. And this is actually smaller than a study that they conducted in 2019, which found that that degradation rate then with vehicles that had been on the road within that time frame was a little bit bigger. So what we're seeing here is that EVs are getting smarter and more efficient. Mentioned how EVs have grown tremendously since the early Leafs were on the road in 2011. So the batteries are becoming more efficient as well. And that degradation rate, which is already very small, has grown smaller. And the study also found that EV batteries generally can last more than 20 years if this degradation rate remains consistent, which we have found to hold true since earlier studies. And next, we'll look at some of the different used rebates. We have the federal used vehicle tax credit for used EVs. This was put into place by the Inflation Reduction Act. And so this federal tax credit is a credit amount of $4,000 or 30% of the sales price, whichever is lesser. There are a few requirements. There are income requirements for this used tax credit. So it's $75,000 if you're an individual filer. If you file a married joint tax, that's $150,000. And if you're a head of a household, that is $112,500. If you are an individual filing taxes, you can access this credit every 3 years. But if you file together on a joint file tax, two individuals can access it in any given year. There are also a few sets of vehicle requirements to access the federal use tax credit. So the vehicle must be at least 2 years old and purchased from a dealership. And that is 2 years old from the date or the year in which you are buying the vehicle. So it's 2025. You might be able to, a 2023 vehicle, depending on the month, could be eligible, or a 2022 vehicle starting in that year. Or that year is the minimum. The cost of the car cannot exceed $25,000. And in terms of obtaining the credit, you can obtain it at a point of sale where you might choose to receive cash. And it is essentially transferred to the dealer and relayed to you, the consumer, as a discount or money off toward the down payment of the vehicle. And receiving at the point of sale, you can access the credit regardless of your tax liability. Tax credit can also be received when filing taxes, and there are some things to keep in mind, whether you are choosing point of sale or during tax time. If you are filing it at tax time, the amount in which you receive is limited only to what you can claim up to your federal tax liability. If you are, either way, if you're receiving at point of sale or at tax time, dealers have a couple of steps they have to do. And in our checklist, which we'll go over at the end of the call, we recommend following up with the dealer to make sure they've done their due diligence on your part to make sure you receive the tax credit. So dealers have 3 days to confirm your vehicle's eligibility and register it on what's called the Energy Credits Online Portal, which is facilitated and run by the IRS. When you are purchasing the vehicle, the dealer must provide you with a time of sale report and a copy of confirmation from the IRS, which confirms that the vehicle is eligible and that you are on track to receive the credit. Whether you choose time of sale or when filing taxes, there is an IRS form you have to fill out. That is Form 8936, and that is linked here. It is important to note that there is a proposed budget bill that has not yet been approved by the Senate, but it is set to eliminate the tax credit by January 1st of 2026, so of next year, if it is approved. We encourage you to act now to make sure that credit can be accessed. But we'll talk a little bit more about steps and other tips going forward later in the presentation. More EV used is a Massachusetts $3,500 rebate for used battery electric vehicles or fuel cell electric vehicles for income qualifying residents. Fuel cell EVs are fueled by hydrogen. We won't spend time talking about fuel cell EVs. So for the sake of clarity, because fuel cell EVs are not very common in New England, because most hydrogen fueling stations are in California, we'll stick to talking about battery electric vehicles. The Department of Energy Resources and the Center for Sustainable Energy facilitate the More EV program. There are some consumer requirements. So if you are a Massachusetts resident participating in an income qualifying program with an adjusted gross income, that must meet the same limits as the federal use tax credit. Those income limits we discussed 2 slides ago. So it's $75,000 if you are an individual filer. If you are a joint of household, it's $112,500. And if you are married, I believe it might be $150,000. In terms of income qualifying programs, some of those include SNAP, LIHEAP, if you receive a discounted energy bill, Mass Health. Later in the slides, there's another income qualifying rebate adder under More EV. We've linked a list of qualifying income programs that, if you participate, will mean you are qualified for this credit. So in terms of other eligibility requirements, the battery electric vehicle or fuel cell EV must at least be 2 years older than the date of purchase or lease. And that sales price limit is $40,000 or less. And in terms of vehicle eligibility, that vehicle cannot have received More EV rebate within the last 36 months or a period of 3 years. If you were to lease a vehicle, that lease term, it has to at least last 36 months. When you are trying to access this credit, there is a pre-approval process to confirm your income and that you meet the income limits. That can be done online, and that process is linked to the slide, and that is to claim the rebate at the point of sale. You can also access More EV at tax time, and you have a period of 90 days after purchase to do so. There are a few additional rebate adders under More EV. These are More EV Plus and More EV Trade-In. So More EV Plus is a $1,500 incentive for income qualifying residents. Those qualifying programs are similar to what I mentioned. SNAP, LIHEAP, Mass Health, or Medicare. And then more EV trade-in is an additional $1,000 that you can add if you were to qualify, if you were trading in an old gas car. That old gas car generally has to be at least 12 years old and still has to have market value. Both of these rebate adders are linked. So if you are looking for more specific information on these two rebates, you're welcome to do so. We do have an upcoming webinar, I believe next month, on more EV, where we'll dive deeper. And just to clarify, if you have $3,500 through more EV used, if you are income qualifying, that's an additional $1,500 you can stack on top of that. Or if you were trading in a gas car, you can add that more EV trade-in rebate. If you live in Rhode Island, the Office of Energy Resources offers a $1,000 rebate for new battery electric vehicles or $750 for plug-in hybrids. I will note, in contrast with Rhode Island and Massachusetts, plug-in hybrids are not eligible for more EV if you live in Massachusetts. To qualify for Drive RI, which is the name of the rebate program, you must participate in an income qualified program or submit a self-attestation form of income. Qualifying programs are similar to that of More EV Used and More EV Plus. Some of the required documentation includes a valid Rhode Island registration certificate for the EV and the final sales agreement. The battery electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid must fall under a sales price limit of $40,000 and must be purchased from a Rhode Island dealership or from a pre-approved list of Massachusetts dealerships. To see that list, that is linked right on this slide. There are a few, given they're so close together, there are a few dealerships in Massachusetts that you can buy your vehicle from and then access Drive RI as well. And then there is an income qualifying rebate adder for Rhode Island residents. It's called Drive Plus. It's $1,500 for income qualifying residents that participate in a state or federal income program. And then again, you would have to submit a self-attestation form of income if you do not participate in one of those programs. In terms of obtaining the rebate, you might apply online within 120 days of purchase. And we included just a graphic here of the different rebate adders in Rhode Island and like how those rebates can add up. So if you are looking to buy a used battery electric vehicle, that's $1,000 through Drive EV, and then an additional $1,500, adding up to $2,500 for the total rebate amount. And then it's $1,500 for a plug-in hybrid, and that is before the used tax credit is added. And we'll move on to some of our popular used EVs that we see available for purchase. So Recurrent Auto is a source that we've mentioned a few times before in this presentation. So they do analyze on the road vehicle data, but they also publish an annual list of the best UEVs based on a long range of criteria. We thought it would be worth to include them. So these numbers and labels might be hard to see. We will go into a few specific examples with pictures, but in terms of looking at the criteria, we can also see that the Nissan Ariya, the 2023 model year version, was their top used EV for 2025. Looking at the criteria, we can see that range reliability means how a range will hold up over time. Accuracy refers to how the dashboard will match up with the range, and variability looks at how the car's tech or dashboard or battery or thermal management systems prepare the vehicle for winter or driving in hot temperatures. And that list is linked here again. So the 2023 Nissan Ariya was labeled Recurrent Auto's Best Used EV of 2025, and here's why. Many are available for under $30,000. The vehicle experiences and has proven to experience little range degradation, and the dashboard accurately reflects the range. And for the 2023 vehicle model year version, the vehicle would retain most of its battery warranty. Recurrent found the Aria to be high performing in the winter and even to retain up to 83% of its maximum range in freezing weather. And that's before battery and thermal management systems are employed. And so that is a really interesting and important thing to note about the Nissan Aria. There are some other popular used EVs that are explored in the best used EV lists by Recurrent, but also some other sources. One of these is the 2020 Tesla Model 3. So these were the runner-ups on Recurrent's list. And some of the reasons behind these being the runner-ups was that for the 2020 Tesla Model 3, it has a high range of 353 miles, and the fact that over 60% can be found for less than $25,000, making them eligible for the federal use tax credit. 2021 Hyundai Kona is another solid option and has a 250-mile range. The majority are sold and found for less than $35,000. They're also on Recurrent's best list for 3 consecutive years, all the way back to 2022. We'll look at 2 other popular options. We'll see the 2021 Chevy Bolt EUV. This has a 247-mile range, and as you can see, the large majority are found for sale under $25,000 and are eligible for the federal use tax credit. The 2021 Volkswagen ID4 is another popular vehicle that we see. Many are coming off of lease, so that means that there are more used ID4s available. And so that is a 250-mile range, and a large majority as well are priced under $25,000. Now, taking what we've learned about the rebates and how different rebates stack up, we're going to look at a few real examples of, so we're looking at a 2023 Nissan Aria. This is one that I used Kelley Blue Book. So I located a Nissan Aria in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and this was a real life example being sold at a dealership. It was listed as $21,000 $21,490. That makes it eligible for the federal use tax credit of $4,000. If we lived in Massachusetts, we could access more EV used, and if we lived in Rhode Island, we could access Drive EV. So that final price before any of those income qualifying or trade-in rebate adders would be almost $14,000 or $16,500, which is pretty affordable and big difference from almost $21,500. But if we were an income qualifying resident, our final price would be $12,000, almost $12,500 in Massachusetts. In Rhode Island, it would be a little bit lower at $11,400. You can see that that difference of $6,000 before the rebate add-in qualifiers really go to show that used EVs can be really affordable. We'll look at another example. Yeah, so I will clarify. Blue refers to Massachusetts, and then orange is Rhode Island. You could see that if you were a Massachusetts resident, you'd save a little bit more. But either way, it is quite a big difference from the first sticker price. We'll also look at an ID4. I did mention that a lot are coming off of lease. That means there's more stock available. This was again a real example from a Rhode Island or Massachusetts dealership. This particular 2021 model year ID4 had 61,000 miles. That sticker price was $19,799, making it eligible for the federal use tax credit. So that is $4,000 off. And then if we live in Massachusetts, you can see what our final price would be, around $12,000 or $14,800 if we live in Rhode Island. And if we are an income qualifying resident, then we would save quite a bit more. And so these are 2 examples we used from Kelley Blue Book. We'll go over Kelley Blue Book in our used EV Finder in a few slides. These are just great resources, and we'll get into them and how you can compare and locate used EVs that are near you.
I'll jump back in to zoom out before we zoom in again. So with the the used EV market obviously depends a lot on the new EV market, and I'm sure you all have seen lots and lots of news on that front in the past couple of weeks and months. So I want to start with the good news story, I guess, which is that the EV market is growing. I read another article this morning that said EV sales globally have jumped by 25%. I think from this month, June 2025 compared to June 2024. And that will continue. We are in a unique moment right now in the US where the future of the EV transition, the speed of it is definitely in jeopardy, but globally it is moving quite briskly. And Recurrent, our good friend Recurrent here, has a slide where they're showing the volume of the used EV market. And you can see that it has been pretty steadily growing with some valleys, usually sort of at the beginning of the year. EV sales in general go down because the federal tax credit is further in the distance. But you can see that there's been a definite upward trend in just the number of used EVs that are available. When Recurrent last did this analysis, they found that 30% of the used EVs that are out there are eligible for the federal tax credit. And next year, or in the next couple of years, we do expect to see a particular bump because after the presidential election and with the very clear statements by President Trump that he wanted to do away with the federal tax credit, there was a big run on EVs at the end of 2024. A lot of those were leases. So in the next couple of years, as those vehicles come off 2 or 3 year leases, we expect to see a bump in the used EV market. So that market is growing steadily. But if we go to the next slide, there are lots of headwinds right now. So if you've been following the debate about the budget, the House version gets rid of the federal tax credit for used EVs, as well as lots of other clean energy tax credits. This week, supposedly, the Senate may come out with a version and vote on it. Then those two versions have to be reconciled, and the bill has to be signed into law by the president. Exactly how that's all going to work out remains to be seen, but it seems pretty likely that that tax credit for vehicles will disappear on January 1st of 2026. So if that is important to you, time is definitely of the essence. Then the situation with tariffs is causing a lot of uncertainty and, quite frankly, sort of whiplash in the vehicle market. There's tariffs on vehicles and vehicle parts. There's tariffs on imports. There's tariffs on steel and aluminum. Sometimes those tariffs add up or stack on top of each other. Other times they don't. We've seen manufacturers say that they're going to hold prices steady until a certain rate and then until a certain date, excuse me, and then kind of all bets are off. We've seen manufacturers hold off on building new plants as a result of the combination of the concern about the federal tax credit and the tariff. So long story short, there's a lot of uncertainty here. And then if you have been following our blog, we spent a lot of time this year talking about vehicle standards, particularly the Advanced Clean Cars standards, which are regulations that both Massachusetts and Rhode Island had adopted that would require manufacturers to deliver more electric vehicles to our states. Congress just used a Congressional Review Act to rescind the approval, basically, that states needed to enforce those regulations. So neither Massachusetts nor Rhode Island can enforce Advanced Clean Cars 2, which was supposed to start in model year 2026. And that's a big loss for our climate goals, but also just consumer choice, because manufacturers are no longer going to have to deliver a certain number of new electric vehicles to our states. And that means that the used market isn't going to see that influx of new vehicles necessarily a couple of years down the line. I will say that Massachusetts and Rhode Island have joined in a lawsuit that California launched because the use of the Congressional Review Act to rescind that approval is not an appropriate use of the Congressional Review Act. So this will likely get fought out in the courts, but long story short, yes, we're facing headwinds, federal tax credit uncertainty, tariff uncertainty, and the loss of one of the key tools in the toolbox we have to increase choice for consumers in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. These are all things we're going to have to contend with in the coming years. But with that, I'll turn it back to Caroline to talk about, I think, our checklist. Unless I've forgotten. No, tools, resources. Take it away, Caroline.
Yeah. So before we get into our checklist and get into the Q&A, I'll just highlight a few of the conversations that we had with some of our EV ambassadors and members of our community who drive a used EV. So Lindsay is one person we spoke to. So Lindsay is on her second pre-owned Nissan Leaf. And she first found her first Nissan Leaf on Craigslist, but she had found her second used Nissan Leaf. It was a 2018 version, and it had an upgraded 150-mile range. So her Leaf cost $11,000 before any rebates. She just wanted to highlight her experience, and we actually met her at a really awesome an event in Somerville, and she has access to lots of charging stations in Somerville that are all within a couple miles of each other. So that was Lindsay's experience. I'll give you a second to read those quotes, and then I'll move on to a couple of other experiences that we had when we talked to different EV ambassadors. So with one person we spoke to, they were able to hop on to the remaining battery warranty and also access a few free years with Electrify America. Sometimes when you purchase an EV, depending on the manufacturer, they'll have options where you can get a charger installed at home or have a couple of free years with Electrify America or ChargePoint, and that was their case. One person we spoke to found a lot of value in different resources that are out there, and they were able to navigate the rebates. One person we spoke to posed a really good and important question that prospective EV buyers should maybe think about, which is, what are your driving patterns? Do you drive long distances, and how it can be important to have a NACS adapter to access the Tesla supercharging station network. And some of the other people we spoke about talked about the learning curve and having taking some time to figure out the routine and organizing their resources to locate charging near you. And then briefly, we have a little checklist for buying a used EV. So there are some tools out there. We have a used EV finder. Kelley Blue Book is another tool where you can compare vehicles and find a fair market price, as well as locate dealers near you that are selling the vehicle you're looking for. Also recommend asking the dealership to perform a diagnostic scan. We talked about this before, and to provide a report on the battery health, so that you are clarified and confident on the battery health and state of your EV and on the remaining warranty that gets passed on to you. You can confirm with the dealership that remaining warranty and your qualification for state and federal rebates. And it's also important, if you're accessing any of the rebates or the federal rebate, to follow up with the dealer a couple of days post-purchase to ensure that they uploaded your information on the Clean Energy online portal and did their due diligence to make sure that you receive the used tax credit. One of those resources is our used EV finder. It's linked to this slideshow, and with that, you can input your desired vehicle specs and compare different used EVs, taking the fair purchase price from Kelley Blue Book. So that's linked here. We also have Kelley Blue Book here. And Kelley Blue Book, if you're unfamiliar, determines a fair price ask for different models, for different model year vehicles, and shows you vehicles for sale near you. Before we jump into Q&A, we have a few events coming up. If you live in Massachusetts, we'll dig deeper into the More EV rebate on July 16th. And here are some other events we'll be at in the next couple of months. So yeah, thank you for joining us. We'll take some time to dive into the Q&A. We're also obliged to note that we're a nonprofit, rely on donations to fund our clean energy advocacy and education programs. Our donation link is linked on this slide. We'll take a few moments to answer some questions. If there are some questions that you have after the Q&A session, please reach out to us. We're happy to share information and get back to you and clarify any questions. I think we'll start the Q&A. I'll welcome my colleagues back on.
Thank you. I'll say I've been responding to a lot of the questions in writing in the chat, but there's a couple things I think that would benefit from just a repetition. So one question is, can you confirm that all of the incentives we talked about today have income limits? So Caroline, I'll just pose the question to you.
Yeah, so I can confirm that for the federal use tax credit, there is an income limit, and for more EV used, there is an income limit for that as well. For the Rhode Island rebate, that income limit, I believe, only qualifies if you are looking at the income qualifying rebate adder, $1,500.
I'll say it's a little confusing and overwhelming because the eligibility requirements are very, very similar between some of these programs, but occasionally very slightly different. So we'll send links in our follow-up email to each of the pages so that you can go straight to the source and see what they say. There was one question about the lifetime maintenance costs that I covered earlier in the presentation about okay, that data is 5 years old. Are those numbers being revised? Particularly in light of the fact that there's a lot of research coming out right now that shows that electric vehicle batteries are going to last a lot longer than anticipated. And I'll say we've seen a lot of research about how those batteries are degrading less quickly than people feared and how they're going to last the lifetime of the vehicle and how they're performing really well even under heat stress. I have not yet seen that research translated into new cost per mile estimates, but that's something we're definitely keeping an eye out for. Let me see. There were also a couple questions about stacking the incentives, and I think Caroline covered this maybe after the question was posed, but yes, you can absolutely stack the federal tax credit with the state rebates. That's the beauty of those two things. Let me see. Suddenly a whole bunch of new questions, so I got to read those, but Caroline, if you see one, go for it.
Yeah. Okay, someone mentioned that they do not have a garage and would an EV still be a good idea? I would say absolutely. It might be a good idea to poke around on PlugShare or a better route planner just to take a look at charging options near you to get a feel for how long you'd have to travel if you're looking to charge at a public charging station. If you do not have a garage, you can still, depending on your situation, you might be able to install a level 2 charging outlet or that 240 volt outlet outside on the side of your house. Many people who do not have a garage I see on my daily walks will have their charging cord just in their driveway or on the side of their house. So if you are interested in that, I recommend getting into touch with that because we can provide some more details on how you might set up your charging cord and weatherize it outside. Someone asked whether we work with dealerships to connect folks with used EVs. I do know that as part of the Drive Green portion of the program, we do not currently work with dealerships. I know that used to be a big part of our program. Anna might be able to speak more on that, but I would recommend using our EV Finder or Kelley Blue Book or use EV Finder to locate EVs for sale that are near you.
I'll add that there are in New England, I think, 2 dealerships that are specifically just used electric car dealerships. they market themselves as being a much better experience buying a used EV, that they'll answer all your questions and that it's more transparent. We haven't assessed them and can't endorse them one way or the other, but one is called Eco Auto, and there's another one in New Hampshire whose name is escaping me right now. So that is an option. We've had some people tell us they had a good experience there. But as Caroline said, yeah, we don't have those direct relationships with dealerships anymore. There's one question that I want to make sure we definitely answer, which is, can you get the point of sale tax credit as a discount even if you don't usually have a tax liability? Yes, that is the beauty of that point of sale tax credit, that you basically are using the dealer's tax liability, if you want to think about it that way. So even if you were to get the federal tax credit at when you file taxes, if your tax liability isn't big enough to capture that whole tax credit, that's the beauty of getting it at the point of sale, that you can capture the whole thing. You just have to make sure that your income is still under the needed limit. And thank you, Elise, for putting in the chat the other one. It's called Green Wave. There's a bunch of questions about chargers and charging adapters that, because we only have a couple minutes left, I'm going to skip for now, but please do email me or Caroline with any questions. We're happy to help, and we can also share the slides share the recordings of the webinars that we had all about charging, where we talk about that. I think we can end on one question, which is, do you know of any coaching service or personal assistance in purchasing a used electric vehicle and figuring out what and how to access? That's what we're here for. We're not quite a coaching experience team, but we are real people who will pick up the phone and talk to you and see if we can help. So definitely feel free to reach out to us, and we will do our best. Actually, I lied. I have one more question that I think we should answer, and then I'll turn it back to you, Caroline. Someone is saying that they don't qualify based on income for the rebates for used vehicles. Do you think, or do we think that now is still a good time to buy a used EV, or is it better to wait because prices may come down once the rebates expire? We have no idea is the short answer. There's so much going on with the vehicle market right now in general that if the tariffs continue to be in place, it takes a while for tariffs to trickle down the whole supply chain and impact consumer prices. But one thing that we might expect to see is that vehicle prices in general, whether electric or not, or new or used, go up because these tariffs are going to make the vehicles more expensive. They might depress demand. There's lots of reasons why vehicle prices overall might go up. And then there's other reasons like that you mentioned, that maybe if the rebates go away, the prices will come down. Which of those forces wins out, I think, is entirely unpredictable right now. So unfortunately, we don't have any recommendations about like how to ride this particular wave. So I hope that helps. But then, Caroline, I'll turn it back to you to close us out.
Yeah, if you have any remaining questions, again, I'll echo Anna's point to email us, because we'll be able to spend some more time on your question and send some resources over to you. But you can also respond to our email when we send out the slides with any remaining questions. Oh yeah, we'll be happy to get back to you. Well, thank you for joining us. I think that really concludes the end of our presentation, now that it's one. We'll be sending out these slides and recording shortly. Please follow up with us if you have any questions. We'll input our newsletter as well. And we have a Drive Green community Facebook group. So if you have any questions and would like to connect to someone who drives an EV, sometimes that can be valuable to hear from someone's firsthand experience. That's a good way to stay connected and engaged with us. So yeah, I think that'll conclude our presentation, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.